What up, friendos? Welcome back. Today, yet again, we're talking about Concord. We just can't stop ourselves because I want more people to unsubscribe from my channel when I say I don't think it's because the woke has ruined the game. But we're going to go over this article today. The eagerness to grave dance on unpopular games has become a bad habit. And let's see if we agree or disagree. Off the headline, if I was to guess, I would probably say I disagree with it. Just because I think there's nothing really inherently wrong with just being like, big corporation that only makes games for money and they're usually soulless husks designed to, cattle farm the consumers, bring them in and milk them as much as possible. They lost a couple $100 million trying to make some slop nobody asked for. I think that's fine. Like, it is what it is. They're companies. They're not going to get their feelings hurt. I think when it goes too far is when people go and attack the developers or go and, point out things to the developers as individuals just for working on the game as if they're bad people for doing a job. I think that's pretty bad. But then some of these developers react in ways that makes it very difficult to have sympathy for them. But ultimately, I have to have sympathy for them because I'm a YouTuber and I literally get this stuff myself. So I can understand, sort of it being overwhelming for people that don't sign up for having this be a part of their life. But obviously people's reactions here are pretty interesting. The eagerness to spread negativity and lies about game studios that don't go along with your agenda has become a bad habit. I agree. Yeah, I agree. There's obviously issues with what game companies like PC Gamer have done with the Black Myth Wukong stuff, which is pretty accepted at this point. It was a pretty bad article talking about mistranslated tweets and things like that. So I will just address real quick, because some people did bring this up in the previous video. A lot of people brought it up in a very respectful manner, which is cool. Some people were saying, oh, Kira, you've gone so woke that you can't even see that wokeness killed this game and things like that. Obviously, I don't agree with that. But I did say in the video, I don't think I really went over it in depth or gave like a great, concise explanation of my thoughts and feelings on this. I said the primary reason the game failed was the gameplay, and I 100% stand behind that. I think the game failed because of the gameplay, first and foremost. And people were saying, oh, if you think the aesthetics don't matter to a hero shooter, you're wrong or naive or ignorant. And I don't think that they don't matter. I just think that they're a barrier for people trying the game, right? But if the game was good enough, again, remember it's a first-person shooter, so you don't see your character when you're playing the game, and it's designed to be a competitive first-person shooter. It's not designed to be like a very arcadey, fun game. It's designed to be like as far as I can tell from playing it, it feels like it's supposed to be a bit more of a competitive element to the game. So in a competitive shooter, something like Counter-Strike or Call of Duty, something in that vein of game, the aesthetic is a secondary to the actual gameplay for people that would play a competitive game. But it is a barrier for people trying the game. If you see a game and it visually looks bad, less people will try it. But the people who do, if the gameplay is good, they'll bring people who thought the aesthetic were bad to play because they'll hear the game's good, and then they'll stick around if they can get past the aesthetic, because again, you're mostly just shooting things that are moving very fast and you're playing a first-person game, so you're not seeing your characters. But obviously, it is a barrier for people getting into the game. The thing is though, that people tried the game and they all left. So I've got to say it's the gameplay first and foremost, because if it wasn't, those people would still be playing and the game would have a steady or upward trajectory for players. So does it matter, like the aesthetic of the game and the character designs? Yes. But do I think the character designs are bad because of woke? No. The character designs are bad because the characters are poorly designed. This is a big robot. It looks shit. Is it shit because it's a woke robot and it's political? No, it's shit because it's a big robot that looks like a man in a garbage can. Like the character that's like a big... Is it in here? Oh, they didn't post it. Oh, here we go. They did post it. This is everywhere, by the way. Is this character poorly designed because it's a person of color that looks a bit chunky? No, it's poorly designed because it's a mint green fucking blob of armor. Like, the characters in this game are not designed badly because of any reason other than they just fucking suck at this aesthetic. Games that want to do something like this with a diverse range of characters. And I'm not saying diverse in the way people are using nowadays. I'm using diverse in the literal sense, in terms of like things being very different. They need to be stylized, because when you have everything trying to be like a, not hyper realistic, but like a realistic sort of graphics, it's very hard to make characters that stand out from each other and look really, really cool, because it's sort of like, it would look odd, right? It'd probably look Uncanny Valley type stuff. So when you basically only have humanoids and robots, this is supposed to be like a universe, right? This is supposed to be, there's aliens everywhere and stuff, and you've got robots, ugly big fat robot, just chunks of metal, and then humanoids. You could do this with a different graphic style and have them be wacky and really stand out, but this ain't it. And this certainly turned people off the game. But if the gameplay was good, people would have played it. And that's just where I'm going to rest on that one. But I definitely agree that the aesthetic plays a factor, of course. If you're going off the title, that it's, I said, but only because it isn't good. It's a title. It's supposed to get people to click, not have every single opinion I have on the topic within just the title. But there we go. Let's talk about this. Concord's low turnout has led to the usual jubilation over the prospect of seeing a big game fail. Sony hero shooter Concord launched late last week, and Steam concurrents haven't yet topped 1,000. Spoiler alert, it's not going to. Unless they release free to play and everyone's just like, yeah, I'll give it a go and see how bad it was, and then they'll very quickly stop playing the game because it's a bad game. The dramatically low turnout has already earned it the title of biggest flop of the year on social media. And if you caught any of the discussion on Reddit, TikTok, and other platforms over the weekend, you mostly saw people gloating, posting screenshots of Steam BD concurrent charts and tacking on a generic dunk, or claiming it rules that we can all see a big game fail. What is this quote? Let me look at this real quick. I feel like Steam numbers have really recontextualized just how badly big executive games can bomb, and it rules. I agree with this. Are we disagreeing with this? Are we disagreeing that it's good we have transparency in the industry? Because I'm sure a lot of executives would love to hide when their game's unpopular, because they do. They don't tell you their game numbers. They haven't done it in a long time. Like WoW used to report subscriber numbers, and now even though subscriber numbers are apparently, allegedly healthy, they're still not going to tell you. Games love not telling you the numbers. If the numbers were amazing, they sometimes would, but then they're not going to continue if numbers go down. Transparency is good. As a journalist, don't you think transparency is good? I'd have thought you would have been one of the first people being like, I guess you've seen something here. Because when I read this, I think it rules that we get to see this. Like, we get to see the data. I think that's what he's saying. Maybe he's wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, sorry. Maybe I'm misinterpreting it. But I feel like this article, the person writing this is basically saying, he's saying it rules that the game failed. Whereas I don't think that's what he's saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Let me know in the comments if I'm getting a misread on this. But I feel like that's what the article's saying. That jubilation over Concord's low turnout, yeah, I think he's getting the wrong end of the stick here, to be honest. It apparently cracked the top 50 bestsellers on the PS Store over the weekend, derives to some degree of an I told you so sense of justice. The idea that out-of-touch, creatively bankrupt executives are cynically chasing trends, and that the rest of us would have had the common sense to avoid releasing a Concord, a Marvel Avengers, a Suicide Squad, a Gotham Knights, or that perplexing Gollum game. Yeah, I mean, I think most people would, right? Because who asked for any of these games? More live service games that do nothing new and are just designed to milk the player base. Who asked for this? You can only have so many of these exist, by the way, before there's just no space in the market for things like this. But all the companies think it's like a never-ending well of resources. And they are if you make a great one. But if you're not going to innovate in any way, like Marvel's Avengers, I played this shit. It was trash. It was very, very poor. And they were using the popularity of the Avengers at the time and Marvel Comics to sell a mediocre, well, a subpar, shitty product. And they were doing it to cynically make money. And was this, do you think people are making a Marvel video game and they're like, oh, this is my passion project, man. Like, I love this. This is amazing. We're making the decisions for the love of the material and the love of the fan base. No, it's being made by a large corporation to make money. And that's fine, because if they make a good product, who cares what the motivation was? I think most people just agree with that through virtue of like being a consumer. Like if something's good, people don't care about this shit. If something's bad, then they're gonna like laugh about it, right? Because then there's no reason to excuse that stuff. There's no reason to look past it. And yeah, of course, some people are gonna be like, "I told you so," because they have told you so. Like, stop making live service sloppy games that people don't want. Otherwise, the games are gonna fail, and then they're gonna laugh at you. Like, it is what it is. If you want to chase this perpetual revenue stream, go ahead. But then people are going to laugh when it fails. It is what it is. And that perplexing Golem game, yeah, that was an interesting one. It's not actually that easy to know why one game succeeds and another doesn't. It kind of is though, isn't it? Because one's good and another one isn't. It's kind of that simple really nowadays because of social media. The devs at Firewalk Studios, many of whom are ex-Bungie, have made a game in the genre they have experience in and released it without the free-to-play monetization we so often complain about, which isn't a cynical or underhanded thing to do. Were people saying that having a box price on this and not having it free-to-play was cynical or underhanded, though? Because I've not seen anybody say that. Maybe they have and I've just missed it. But I don't see the relevance here. But I really don't see what this has to really do with anything. The box price again is an issue because the game's worse than their competitors and costs more money. Like it's just the game's going to fail based on that. Concurrency numbers have, in some situations, acquired a moral quality. If you release an unpopular game, everyone is suddenly morally justified to shame and embarrass you, whether it's because all big budget games are bad, or live service games are bad, or you just did too much woke, pick one. There's certainly an element of this, of course. But at the same time, I think it's very unhelpful when game journalists write whole articles treating minority opinions and minority actions as if they are the norm, because they're certainly not. If you think the majority of people are shaming or moralizing in some way, like, or trying to embarrass individuals who made the game, the overwhelming vast majority are not doing that. They're simply laughing at the game as a inanimate object, and the fact that Sony put so much money into this. They're not trying to shame and embarrass individuals who worked on the game. So I'm sure some people are, because I know people on the internet are very, very unhinged. But I don't think it's useful to write articles where the entire premise is basically focusing on extremes. My guess at the real reason for all this grave dancing is that it feels like a victory over FOMO, fear of missing out. If the new $40 game sucks and no one is playing it, I can safely go back to whatever I was playing before without worrying that anyone's having fun without me. Is this... I legitimately want to know, because I think this is wrong, but can you guys let me know in the comments if anybody feels this way? Like, if you were honest with yourself, is this a thing you've ever thought? Do you feel that you've won over FOMO because the game is bad and it cost $40 and you'd have had to have bought it if it was good? Because I've never felt like this, but, you know, maybe I'm missing something. Beating up on unpopular games is also a way to passively farm a satisfying sense of vindication. If I never paid attention to a game that fails at launch, it affirms the correctness of my judgment and the immaculacy of my taste without any effort on my part. I don't think this is like a majority opinion at all. Maybe some people feel this way. You know, when people dunk on things on social media, you know why they do that? It's because they get validation from it and they get upvotes and they said the popular thing. Most people didn't play this game, nor would they have been interested in playing this game, but it's very easy to post something and be like, lol, Concord bad. And they're right, lol, Concord is bad. But that obviously plays a factor, and people are going to join in on that bandwagon. It's just how the internet works. But are people really like going into this with the idea that like, oh yeah, this makes me sound really smart and cool and I'm correct all the time? Maybe some, who knows. When a struggling game has a high enough profile as Concord does, the reasonable impulse to crack a joke about Steam concurrence gives way to that sort of thinking, which then gives way to a shit-talking free-for-all that turns the developers into cartoonish corporate stooges and totally warps the reality of the game. Has it warped the reality of the game, though? the reality of the game is that nobody's playing it by and large. Like, it's a very unsuccessful game, just factually. How are they warping it? And again, are we really saying that like the minority of people, the vast minority, by the way, a handful of people probably, are really going after the developers and turning them into cartoonish corporate stooges? Because if somebody says, oh, this game was just developed to make money, are they wrong? Are we saying Sony put hundreds of millions of dollars into this, allegedly? Again, nobody knows the number as far as I'm aware. I've seen 50 to 100 to 200 million, who knows? Are we saying that they put that money into there because they're not just trying to do that? Because that is like a corporate, that just seems like what they did. But, you know, Battlefield 2042 became one of these dog piles back when it launched. The game also was dog shit when it launched. And to make their point, its detractors started copying and pasting a giant list of features from previous Battlefield games that DICE was accused of removing, including features I don't remember anyone liking in the first place. I never saw anyone use Battlefield 1's fortification building system, but it became a must-have feature as soon as it could be used as a bludgeon. So, Battlefield 2042, when it came out, right, was pretty universally panned. Has it recovered now? I think people didn't like the game, right? 2.2. It even got a 68 off of critics, which is not a good score for a video game nowadays from the big companies that are doing these reviews. My question would be, why, when a game is reviewed poorly, doesn't do well, and everyone can see that and agree on that, mostly, of course, some people are going to like it, but by and large, people are agreeing with this. Why would you feel like it's a thing you need to do to go and look at, like, one thing that somebody listed that's been removed from the game and be like, oh, you're actually just picking fault and using this as a bludgeon to attack the game and the developers? Why would you focus on that and not just focus on the fact that, yeah, the game was bad when it launched and it probably got better after it launched, but what difference does that make to the launch reception? Because you're even talking about back when it launched, which it launched in a bad state. And also, this is just kind of true that this is kind of how games go now. The Sims does it all the time. The Sims 2, if you have the DLCs, has more content in it by the end than when Sims 3 releases, by a country fucking mile. And then you basically get in a game that sometimes they even take features that was out of the base first version and then sell them back to you in a DLC. And I'm not saying that they did this, but when so let's say you bought the new Call of Duty and they sold map packs like they used to, or, you know, Halo or whatever, and then you play that game for 2 years, then the new one comes out, and you have less maps to play on than the one previously, and they're all gone, and then you have to rebuy them when they get released later. And they do this with features. They don't always sell them back to you, but often they just rush a new release of like a new version of the game, and they take stuff out. Do some people care about those features? Sure. Do some people notice that they're gone and say, oh, there's just less stuff in here now, and it's a bad game? You know, if it was a good game, they wouldn't be even talking about this. The fact that they are means that obviously they're just pointing out all the things that are missing and that are wrong and that are bad because the game's bad. Otherwise, you know, they wouldn't be making this post on Reddit in the first place. So, yeah, I just feel like it's odd to focus on like, oh, you know, this one thing that nobody used, that was in there and they used it as a bludgeon, as opposed to, yeah, the game was bad and there was a big list of stuff that wasn't in there. I don't think the mistake DICE made with Battlefield 2042 was not making a list of every discrete feature that's ever been in a Battlefield game and then putting them all into one game. But through the warped lens of Reddit and other platforms, that's what the conversation became. Is it? Is it though? Or were they just saying these are the things that were missing and the game's bad? You're laughing. Sony spent 300 million on Concord and on release couldn't break past 700 concurrent players, and you're laughing. Good meme. Good meme. Above, it's not clear where this 300 millions figure has come from. It never is. People just make shit up, but it's funny, so it is what it is. Concord's Steam launch numbers are astonishingly low for a blockbuster competitive game. True. But the piranha-like gnashing of social media hasn't delivered any real insight into why it's fared so poorly. So you could take this sentence either way, right? Some people have given insight onto why it's fared so poorly. I've done it. I've seen people do it. But if you're addressing only the piranha-like gnashing on social media, then of course that's how you're going to see it. But if you're not, there is insight out there on why it's done poorly. You just have to look for it and not treat it as if everybody's just doing this. Because of course, when something is this popular, there's going to be opinions from everybody because it's 2024 and everyone with a social media account has an opinion. And obviously, when people see a game that's this huge and it's done this badly, this is one of the most embarrassing launches I've ever seen for a product that's cost this much money. It's pathetic. Like, there's no other way to describe it. It's really, really bad. Some onlookers have said with conviction that Concord's $40 price tag was obviously one of the problems. It was. Factually, it was. Forgetting that Helldivers 2... The fuck is irrelevant? Okay, let's give him a chance. Let him cook, as the kids would say. Forgetting that Helldivers 2, the biggest breakout game of the year, and a game also published by Sony, is $40. What has that got to do with literally anything? As we say, what has that got to do with the price of milk? Yeah, they're both $40 and they're both published by Sony. They're the only two things that I can see that have any kind of correlation or relevance. One of them is a competitive first-person shooter that is competing directly with other games that do exactly what it does but better, and one of them is a game that has no real competitor in terms of what plays like Helldivers 2 in the market when that game came out. Nothing off the top of my head. Like, you could argue the I guess co-op drop-in games like Deep Rock Galactic and things, but not really the same. I don't know what this has really got to do with anything. Maybe I'm just missing. Maybe I'm in a really critical mood and I'm just being a dick. In a saturated market where 39 games release on Steam each day on average, 38 of them being just shovelware hentai garbage, by the way. So yeah, I'm not convinced that price was a problem. It was. Concord couldn't even get a large audience to give it a shot during its free beta. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but didn't the free beta happen after the paid beta? And people had already said, like, oh, the game sucks. And the marketing for this game was trash, by the way. If you watch the gameplay video of this game, like, look at the gameplay trailer for this thing. 3 months ago, let's look at this one. Like, this is the gameplay trailer. This is not how the game looks, by the way. This is just, obviously, their interpretation of how people would look playing the game. It looks trash. Like, it actually looks worse than the real game does. Nobody plays games like this. It looks goofy. So, yeah, the marketing for this game was utter ass. Let's be honest. Yeah, so I think I proved my point on that one. I'm not convinced price was a problem. Yeah, they didn't give it a shot because people had played it, said it sucked, and it looked like it sucked. I don't have the one true answer, but my take for now is that Concord isn't selling a fancy or narrative that's getting FPS players excited to play it in the first place. Before they've decided even whether they like its guns, characters, and modes, and one reason I can imagine it's struggling in that respect is that it doesn't have an easily disseminated identity rooted in competitive shooter pedigree as its competitors do. Valorant is Counter-Strike. It's easy to tell your Discord friends it's CSGO by the League of Legends studio. That's fine. I don't think this plays like a huge factor. Apex Legends came from Infinity Ward lineage. Deadlock is Dota plus TF2. Concord comes from ex-Bungie devs, but I don't get the impression that Destiny 2 fans perceive it as an offering with any deep spiritual connection to their beloved space fashion game, of which the PvP Crucible is a small part. I don't think this makes that much of a difference, because again, this is ignoring the fact that people played the game and quit, right? I think the game's just bad. I think this is the simplest thing in the world. We've got to the point where we need to justify making an article about something that can be explained in very simple terms. The game's bad, so people didn't play it and they quit when they did. If this was the only thing that mattered or that had like a major factor, the people that played would have continued playing. It's just that the game's bad. It is what it is. Dramatic post-launch turnarounds do happen, and maybe updates in a sale can get Concord some momentum. I fucking doubt it. Or maybe there just isn't enough oxygen available to a game with Concord's particular characteristics in late August 2024, a period that's included one of the fastest selling games ever on Steam, a World of Warcraft expansion, great new games like Tactical Breach Wizards, and now Valve's own hero-based MOBA shooter hybrid. I mean, it's undoubtable that this game came out at a bad time. Deadlock becoming essentially open beta would have smothered the fuck out of this game in the first place, even if it was good, because it's a Valve game and everyone loves Valve. And Valve games come out very seldomly and this one's a banger. So yeah, I'll give you that. I'll even give you the one of the fastest selling games ever on Steam came out, which, you know, let's ignore the fact that the fastest selling game on Steam sold 90-something% of its copies in China. So was Concord competing with the Chinese audience? Because if not, this doesn't really play that much of a factor. Plus, it's a single-player game. People are done with those in like a week usually. World of Warcraft expansion, World of Warcraft players are World of Warcraft players. They're probably not going to be playing Concord anyway. But I do get what you're saying. But at the same time, I don't think there's a good argument for is there enough oxygen for Concord. I think that Concord's bad, and therefore there is no oxygen for it because people want to suffocate this game because it sucks, and that's just how it is. DICE went on a years-long Battlefield 2042 overall campaign after its rough launch. It's possible Firewalk will stick with it. It's possible Firewalk will, but it's not their choice, is it? They got purchased by Sony. So it's up to Sony to say whether or not they're going to continue paying for them to try and fix a game that they've paid hundreds of millions of dollars for and has failed abjectly, utterly, disgracefully, embarrassingly. Will they let them continue? I don't think so. I think throwing good money after bad on this one is a total waste of time. I've said it and I'll say it again. I don't think you can do anything with this game. I think maybe if you... The thing is that I have to assume some level of like competence or understanding, which is hard to do because you released a game like this and nothing about this game is good. The aesthetic's not good. The gameplay's not good. The things people care about are not good. So if you released a game like that, one of two things happened in my mind. Could be wrong again. I'm just me talking utter fucking shite. I know nothing about any of this. One, the corporate overlords force you to launch it because you're massively over budget, massively over time, and they just wanted to start getting some money for it. In which case, those people... they're not going to make the game better, are they? And them giving you more money isn't necessarily going to change anything because you've had 8 years to do that. Or number two, you're the creatives, you had full control over this, you had full control over when it released, and you decided it was ready now, in which case you're incompetent and the game is never going to do anything. Either one of those two is an indictment of the state of the game and the game going forward. Maybe there's a third option, maybe there's 57 more options, who knows? But the fact is that the game released like this and somebody did that. Somebody said, this is ready, launch it. Or they said, you've had long enough, get it the fuck out the door. Either way, I can't then have faith that, you know, sticking with it will change anything. You stuck with it for 8 years and this is what you got. And it's one of the worst failures I think I've ever seen in AAA gaming, which is saying something. Either way, the reflex to cheer for Concord's failure, as if it's deserved, only produces resentment and misunderstandings, creating an environment where everything is deemed obvious and real analysis is drowned out in favor of shareable quips, surface-level observations, and hyperbole. I mean, these all have places in modern discourse. I don't even necessarily completely disagree with this sentence. I just think that it's coming from a place that most people are they just don't care about. Again, most people don't care about this shit. They don't care about why it failed or you know, are you responsible, or should you, you know, pat them on the head and say, oh, there, it's okay, Sony. Like, bro, it's a huge company. Who gives a fuck about Sony? I don't care about Sony. I'm sure some, you know, what they call them, ponies. Is Sony the pony fan? I don't know. I'm sure some people really care about Sony, but I don't, because I understand that companies don't care about me. So why the fuck would I care about if they release a shit game? Obviously, it sucks if these people from this studio lose their job, but at the same time, like, that's not my responsibility. The game sucks. Like, make a better game. And the thing is that there are talented people who work here that absolutely would have put their all into making the game, but this is not on them. That's not their responsibility. They have a job, like a street sweeper has a job. It's not the street sweeper's fault if the fucking council doesn't give them enough money to cover all the streets, is it? Like, whoever was making decisions on this game fucked it up, and it's no one's responsibility but that company. That's it. Like, this idea that consumers are supposed to be like, oh, you know, it's okay, they're there. The only thing I agree with is that people shouldn't be going after the devs as individuals and humans, because why would you do that? It's nothing to do with them most of the time, unless you have evidence that like one person made all these decisions and made the game bad. Like, why are you even trying to speak at these people or talk about them? It makes no sense. But yeah, real analysis definitely does get drowned out, but it does exist. These are not the ugliest character designs you've ever seen. Reddit, get a grip. I mean, we looked at that earlier. It's a pretty fucking ugly character design. You can understand why this is a more comfortable rhetorical lane than reckoning with the more complex reality of a volatile gaming landscape, where quality is not the sole predicator of success. Kind of is, though, isn't it? It kind of is. Where multi-billion-dollar institutions like Sony now often struggle to be heard. Mate, you've just posted in this article that the game's crazy popular. Like, not crazy popular, sorry, that everyone's talking about it. And that it's, like, huge, right? When a struggling game has a high enough profile, as Concord does, everyone knows about Concord now. They've not struggled to have their voice heard. Everyone's heard it. Everyone's seen this game and they've decided they don't want to play it. They've not struggled. They're screaming very loudly and it's obnoxious. Like, I don't know where this comes from. Where it's difficult to make predictions. You could have... Maybe I'm doing that thing you was talking about earlier, like, oh, you know, I just want to be right. You could predict this was going to fail. You could. And where it often feels like years of work can be swept away by small miscalculations and rapid changes in taste. Nothing rapid has changed about this genre, by the way. Multiple of these games have released and failed because there's not that big of an audience that want them. And the people that are wanting these games just play Overwatch. And will probably now play Valorant. And will probably now also play Deadlock. There's not that many. There's just not that much space for a game that isn't doing what they're doing, but better. And this game doesn't do what they do. This game is like a hybrid between a very serious competitive game like Counter-Strike and something like Overwatch. But it doesn't get either of those things well. It doesn't walk the line well at all. It feels bad. It looks bad. And that's just kind of how it is. I completely reject the premise that this is like an issue. I do think it's an issue that people go after developers and whatever else, but that's the only thing I think is a problem. Grave dancing on games made by corporate companies that are just basically looking to milk gamers with live service slop that nobody cares about. That's not a problem. Like, hold them accountable. They made a shit game. When it fails, tell them that it's their fault that the shit game failed, because it fucking is. That's real life. But there we go. I think that's it. I think I'll edit this video and then go to bed because it's 2 a.m. Probably play a little bit of RuneScape first, you know. Gotta do my farming runs. But yeah, thanks for watching, as always. If you enjoyed, or if you like waifu cups, like this one, beautiful waifu cup, or you like drinks that you put in powder. No, what am I fucking saying to me? It's 2 a.m. Powder that you put in water and you shake it and you drink it and it tastes really good. There's loads and loads of different flavors. If you like that, go to the link in the video description. Buy GamerSups. Use my code. You'll get a discount. I'll get a kickback. You save money. I earn money. Win-win. Yeah, thanks for watching. Check out my socials. Suggest me content on Twitter. DMs are open. Discord, things like that. See you next time. Peace.